Hello BookTube. Well, it's been a while. On the good note, I'm very happy to say that I do not suffer from reading fatigue. I've just got a mild to rather severe case of life fatigue, which perhaps is a bit worse, except that I'm still reading, so good news on that note. Anyway, before I start with my end of month wrap up, I thought maybe I should give you a little bit of a life update, because things are not going to make sense if I don't fill in a few gaps here and there. So you know that I'm a teacher, right? And that I really love doing what I do. I love the kids that I teach. I suppose it's the modern day and age. I need to explain that that's maternal feelings, nothing else. But I handed in my resignation. I've been at this school for 7.5 years, and I just can't do it anymore. I work insanely long hours. I work 18 to 20 hours a day, prepping lessons, etc., setting exams. And it's not a 1-year thing, it's been a 7.5-year thing. I have not played the piano in 7.5 years. Beethoven's Pathetique is now just plain pathetic. I haven't drawn or painted in 7.5 years. My novel that I wrote is still sitting in its first draft. It hasn't moved in 7.5 years. And it finally got to the point where something needed to break, and unfortunately it was me. So it was the hardest choice that I've had to make in a very long time, and because of the way things work, we needed to give a term's notice, which is technically 3 months, and as nobody hires 3 months in advance, I'm not sure what's happening in 2018. 2018 could be fabulous, or it could be the other F word. But in the meantime, I have got a job as a bookseller, and tomorrow I am heading off to work to go and sell books at my favorite bookshop. I will be handing in my VIP customer badge and getting one that says Lucky, I suppose. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm good at what I do. I've got 10 years experience, so something needs to come up, I hope. If not, I do have a backup idea, and that is to head back to Asia. I taught English as a foreign language in South Korea for 3 years, so it's not as I haven't done it before. But yeah, just a bit of a quick update, and probably a bit of an explanation as to why I've been a bit AWOL, because I've had to move 7.5 years worth of stuff. Because one thing, when you're a teacher, unlike most other jobs, you pretty much stock your own things. You buy your own pens, you make your own posters, you bring your own furniture. That was fun. And I've had to go and collect it all and find space for it. So yeah, a bit of a quick life update there. Anyway, let's leave that side behind and look at what I've read so far this month. Well, read so far this month. Read this month. So the first two you will know about. I read Othello and King Lear. These two I did actually make videos about, the only 2 videos I've made this month, ShakeTube, which I then I didn't have the energy to go and make another video. So I read Macbeth, loved Macbeth, but I read Macbeth a while ago, so I didn't think it really counted. And then, yeah, Antony and Cleopatra and The Tempest. I really want to read The Tempest, but it's just not going to happen now. Next year. Next year, I promise. Anyway, moving on. So the next book is Wild Wonderland and the End of the World by Haruki Murakami. So, sorry, end of year stress flu germ starting to rise. This was a very original story. That's one thing I have to say about the books that I've read by him, is that there's nothing that I've encountered before, and I really do enjoy that. Now, this story has 2 narratives that are intertwined throughout. So the first one is set in a futuristic or an alternative Japan, where you've got this guy who basically works on keeping industrial secrets, and he creates a code. Now, his brain has been altered so that the left and right hemispheres can separate, and he can sit and work out codes and all sorts of things. It was rather complex. And then the other world is set in a fantasy world, so you've got the sci-fi fantasy combo going, which was quite nice. But even though everything about this is something that I should have loved, I found myself underwhelmed, and I'm not 100% sure why. Well, I've got a suspicion, and I think it's got something to do with the character, particularly in the futuristic alternate Japan. Although actually it kind of did extend to the other world too. But he was a very cold, very distant guy. I mean, I've seen people respond more emotionally over silly things like, where's my car keys? You know, I don't want to go into too much details. And then the other thing is that I went in with a prejudice because the Murakami that I've read already, I have not enjoyed his female characters, and I kind of went in expecting that. And although in this book it actually makes sense as to why they're very flat, one-dimensional, I did not quite, well, it only makes sense later on as to why they are like that. And I felt it a little bit insulting that the one girl is referred to as the fat girl and things like that. So although it made sense later, I found it a bit insulting, to be totally honest. It was decent, it was a good story. Maybe it was just the wrong time. Maybe there's way too much going on in my head and in my life right now to sit down and completely appreciate much. So the next book I read was Moody by T Plaatje. So this was one of the books that I mentioned in the South African books tag, or read your country tag. Now this was the first black author to be published in English in South Africa, which already makes this something that's important to read. And I must admit, I really enjoyed this. This story is about, it's a really horrible cover, the Baralong tribe who were invaded by the Matabele under the control of Mtsilakazi. Now, this was something that we had heard about in history, not so much with the Baralong tribe. In fact, we heard nothing about them. But we had heard of the ferocity of Mtsilakazi. And apparently, they were quite a bloodthirsty bunch of blokes. So that part made sense. It fitted in with what I already knew. The writing style, though, wasn't something that I generally like. It was very clinical, very sterile, very little figurative language. But that doesn't mean that it's poor writing. I know that today we've got this show don't tell attitude towards it, but I think in a way that this captured the oral tradition. Not that I want to knock this and say that this is an oral tradition, but you could almost, when I was reading this, it felt like somebody was telling me the story. So I quite enjoyed that part of it. The other thing that I felt quite surprising is that the African tribes are notoriously patriarchal. I mean, they're ruled by men. The men are everything. They can have multiple wives, etc. Generally. Well, they do. But in this, Moody was the wife, and the book is named after her. And I really appreciated that even in this patriarchal society, you have the idea of the value of woman, and you really felt the love and affection between the couple in the story. So basically what happened in this, you had the, as I said, the Matabele who came in and raided the Baralong tribe, and they killed everybody, women, men, children, babies, you name it. It was brutal. That's how the story starts. And you have, oh good Lord, what was his name? Rataga? Ugh. Hang fire. Looking for it. He was, it sounds like Ratanga Junction, but it's not Ratanga, Rataga. Oops, I missed it. I saw it. Rataga. It was. There we go. And he manages to escape the slaughter, and he's walking through the bush, and he stumbles upon Moody, who was also from the Baralong tribe, and who had also managed to escape. And from then on, it kind of becomes a love story. The two get married, although there's no official ceremony because there's no ancestors, family, etc. There's nobody to marry them, but they become a family, and it's basically how the Baralong tribe, together with other small tribes and the Voortrekkers, basically turn on the Matabele, which was actually quite an interesting story. I'm very happy that I read it. I can't say it was the most enjoyable story I've ever read, but I'm really happy that I read it, and I must admit the vocabulary in this was quite outstanding. I needed to haul out the dictionary quite often. The next one is Moving Pictures by Terry Pratchett. So in this story, movies come to the Discworld, and this was kind of what I was in the mood for. It was light, it was funny, but once again, because it's Terry Pratchett, you have a lot of satire, and you know, it's fantasy, far distant fantasy, but yet he still manages, as I said in my review on this, to hit the reality nail on the head. So I would recommend this book to people who enjoy movies, because there are so many little lines and more famous lines and quotes and whatnot from popular movies, from like Casablanca, etc. Gone with the Wind, I think, was definitely there. And so I think people who enjoy things like that will get a good kick out of it. But yeah, although this is technically in the Industrial Revolution series of the Discworld, you do get cameos from other people. You have the wizards that rock up. You saw Nobby and Nobby Knobs and, oh good lord, the other guy, his friend. Detritus is there. It was, I enjoyed it. It was fun. Bit of a touching ending though, but it was fun. Then, my mom and I read this one together, The Fate of the Tearling. Now, I really enjoyed the first one in this trilogy, which was There's Something Else About the Tearling. Can you tell that I've been under a lot of stress? I no longer have a short or long-term memory. Anyway, so I enjoyed the first one. The second one I thought was dreadful. And this one was pretty much about the same as the second. I thought maybe the second book was a second book slump. But this was just pretty awful. The spine of the story, if you just take the bare bones of it, was actually really cool. There was a lot of original ideas in there. I liked the idea of the time issues, the fantasy. The bare bones of it was great. But after that, everything just kind of fell apart. Characters were unrealistic. They changed left, right, and center. I mean, let's consider this. Here is your mortal enemy. You think the guy has tried to kill you, like gruesomely kill you. So let's make a plan. I know, let's shag him. So it just, you know, it's stupid. I just wasn't a fan. And of course, the ideal world that she's trying to create. Yeah, I'm a little bit too worldly to believe that that would have worked at all. I think the chaos in the beginning was a lot more realistic. But what made it even worse was the fact that I was reading this at the same time. And similarities perhaps, folks. But anyway, so finished The Fate of the Tearling series over and done with, thank goodness. And I can now go and flog it. Go get some other books that are decent for that. Anyway, so the last book that I finished this month was Stalin by Robert Service, and this was probably the most enlightening book that I have read in a very, very long time. I went into it because I had read Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Shepetis, and I knew nothing about what happened in Lithuania with Stalin. I didn't know how the hell he'd even got there. A no aggression pact with Germany, with Hitler. So I got hold of the one person in the world who knows everything, and that's Steve, and he recommended this book for a very thorough knowledge. And I must admit, it was extremely thorough. I learned about Stalin from childhood all the way through to death. And yeah, that was a bit disappointing. You know, I'm not a psychopath. But even then, I feel he got off... Shit, he really got off lightly. If reincarnation is a thing, not that I think it's a thing, but if it ever is a thing, he's got something like 30 million years of suffering to like, or 30 million lives to go through for what he's done. But yeah, I learnt about, as I said, his childhood, the cause to try and overthrow the Tsars, and then Lenin and how he, when Lenin died, how Stalin took over. The non-aggression pact was with Germany was in there. It explained all of that. The year of terror, well, the 2 years of terror, 37, 38. Yo, that was something. I don't know how the hell this man got there. That's the one thing, you know, this answered every single question I had or never knew I even had except for how the hell did this happen? That just makes no sense whatsoever. How the hell did this happen? But then, I mean, I live in Africa, and I mean, Robert Mugabe, you know. Although, I just have to say, it snowed in South Africa that week that he got booted off. Just saying. The impossible does happen. But yeah, this even covered North and South Korea in more thorough detail than I had learnt when I was in South Korea. So that was pretty cool too. So I'm not used to reading biographies, so obviously the language is a lot more sterile than I'm usually used to, because it's just fact, 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 you know. But Robert Service every now and again does have his opinion come through, which I did enjoy. Sometimes he'd put it in parentheses, but most of the time it's mostly just fact, which does make it a bit, you know, less... Oh, well, you're not able to lose yourself in it, let's put it that way. Anyway, so that is my wrap-up, filmed on my iPhone, because the iPad is to be returned to work when I go back to school, which, well, we're still doing that. Yeah, I'm tag teaming 2 jobs at the same time this week. So, yeah. Well, that's me. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to watching everybody else's wrap-ups. Good night for now. Bye.